Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Julianne. I'm with the MBA Admissions Office for the Stanford Graduate School of Business. I'm so thrilled that you're joining us today. I'll be your host today and moderator, but the main focus is really going to be talking to our alumni who are all from South America, so you'll get a really great perspective. I'm now going to move into our panelists. So I've got their information up here on the screen. And I'd like each of our panelists to introduce yourselves as you can. So maybe we can just move, starting with Sophia, and move across the chart. If you would include your name, where you're from, class year, and then maybe your favorite experience, whether it's academic or extracurricular from the GSB, that comes top of mind. And Sophia, I just put you on the spot to think of your memory, but if there's something that comes top of mind that stands out to you as a really positive experience of the GSB, let's start with her.
Hi, everybody. I just saw there's 182 people connected, so it's a very big crowd. Well, my name is Sofia Riva. I'm MBA class of 2008. I'm from Argentina. I did my undergrad in University of Pennsylvania in Wharton. And before the MBA, I did investment banking. After that, I did investment banking and also private equity. And for the past 6 years or so, I've been working at Riva, which is a family-owned construction business in Argentina. And in terms of the GSB, the overall experience is amazing. I think in terms of friendships and relationships, that's one thing I would highlight. Julianne didn't give me a lot of time to think about it, so that's what I'd like to highlight. And also, I graduated. I'm the oldest in the panel, so I think it probably changes throughout the years. What do you value the most?
Can I continue?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, this is Ignacio Gorupix. I am a class of 2009. I did my undergrad in Buenos Aires, in Argentina. I lived here in Argentina as well. All my background was in corporate finance in industrial companies. I wanted to do the MBA to switch into management consulting, and I made it happen. So I have been working with McKinsey for the last 12 years. I am a partner based in the Buenos Aires office, serving clients all over Latin America these days on a remote mode, as you can imagine. One nice memory that I always have with me, it's a class that probably you all know. It's touchy-feely. It has a more formal name called Interpersonal Dynamics. But one of the activities into that class is to have and spend a weekend inside a house with all your classmates from your learning group. And it's a very intense and very personal moment of sharing and a lot of group dynamics that the teachers put together. So I remember that weekend as a very inspiring one and a situation where I learned a lot from my classmates who were from like very different backgrounds compared to mine. So that's a nice memory I have from the GSB.
It looks like Daniela, I don't know if she's on yet, but maybe we'll move over to you, Jose.
Yes, perfect. Hi, everybody. Jose Gabel here. I am from Peru. I'm back in Lima. Before Stanford, I was doing investment banking, primarily in Peru, and also had a short stash in New York. And after the MBA, I remained in banking. I spent almost 2 years in San Francisco and then moved back to Lima. And I currently work for JP Morgan. In terms of experiences, I could take the whole panel to share experiences, but in addition to the amazing anecdotes and friendships, I ran into Steve Jobs one day on my way to campus. It was a bit embarrassing because I had a BlackBerry, so I took a picture to the guy who invented the iPhone using my BlackBerry. And the other good anecdote is I found out years later that the house where I spent my second year is the one where Mark Zuckerberg founded Facebook. So two good things related to the GSB experience.
Jose, we shared the same house.
True. 1 year apart.
Yes.
Well, I guess it's my turn. I'm Lucas Alamunich. I'm Chilean. I'm an MBA class of 2020, so recently graduated. My undergrad was in Chile, in Universidad Católica, and then I did 5 years of investment banking, also at JP Morgan, most of them being in Santiago, but also kind of a short stint in New York, which is probably the same as Jose had. And yeah, after GSB and during the summer, actually, I joined Axel KKR, which is a growth equity, private equity firm focused on technology investments around the world and into Latin America. And I've been doing that actually for the summer also during 2020 on a part-time role and full-time starting last month. Regarding my favorite GSB experience, I mean, it's pretty fresh and it's probably too many to recount. But one that comes into my mind is we had a global study trip, which is one of the requirements to graduate actually in New Zealand. And doesn't matter the reason, but our tour guide for 2 days was the former Prime Minister of New Zealand. So actually, he was during the whole time, telling us the story of the country and actually explaining us everything that was going on while we were traveling in the country. And then we spent barbecues at his place, and he was just extremely friendly with us. And having a tour guide, which is basically the former Prime Minister, is something that I wasn't expecting before coming to the GSB. And similar to the encounters with Steve Jobs and whatnot, like you're going to experience many of those things you wouldn't expect to experience before.
Thank you all. I'm going to throw a couple questions out there to start us off. I know there's some questions coming in through Q&A, which is great, but we'll start maybe Ignacio and Luca. I'm going to start with you. Ignacio, you mentioned a class that was your favorite, and Luca, since you just recently finished, I'd like to hear what academic experience, whether it was a class, a professor, or project, which was your favorite one? And this is, we're really trying to understand how Stanford might expand someone's mindset and help them grow academically. So Luca and Ignacio, if you could take that question.
Ignacio, do you want to start?
Okay, I can start. There is a class, it's called Path to Power by Michael Pfeffer. It's a professor. He has written a lot of books. And I still remember the class because the topic is quite unique. It's not a traditional angle. It's around like power dynamics and how those power dynamics play out in any corporate environment. And it's not only the shiny side of power or interpersonal dynamics, but probably the other not that shiny, which is around advancing your agenda, trying to gain an advantage. And what I remember about the class was that it was very straightforward, very direct, very blunt, and it had a lot of testimonials. So I remember we will have a lot of entrepreneurs and executives coming into the class and to share their experiences. And in some occasions, those experiences were like positive ones, like Steve Jobs coming in or the CEO of Google coming in. But in some other instances, the speakers were people who didn't do that great, who made mistakes. And I remember that part especially because it was like very real to have all those experiences, from the positives and the not so positives or the negatives. So that was a very useful and applicable subject back in time.
Yeah, in my case, I'd say, so I came to the GSB with the idea of trying to take like 0 finance classes. I know that's probably not possible because you need to take at least 1 as a requirement, but I was almost able to achieve that objective. And I took mostly entrepreneurship, computer science, and soft skill classes. One of them called Formation of New Ventures, which is basically a class where they give you a brief introduction. It's like Entrepreneurship 101, but the whole purpose of this class is to convince you to make the jump to entrepreneurship. So the 2 professors, one of them is the former dean at the GSB. they bring this like the most amazing entrepreneurs, which many of them are actually graduates from the GSB. And the whole idea is for you to realize that they're like normal people that launched amazing things, and how they went through all of those struggles through a case study approach. And it was kind of a very transformational class, because it makes you realize that whatever you want to achieve in the future is possible, and that normal people, and I consider myself like a normal guy, can do that through grit and through like just pursuing it. And it was amazing. So founder of DoorDash, founder of TRX, and many others who came through the GSB, where they're presenting their stories and talking about their struggles.
Thank you. So Jose and Sophia, I'm going to come to you next. Could you talk about how you've grown as a leader as a result of your GSB experience?
Perfect. I can start there, Julian. So I would say probably, the most impacting, the highest impact that the GSB had in me, at least, was not so much on the amount of knowledge that I took out of it, but how I grew as a person. And clearly at the GSB, you are surrounded by extremely talented people. Many of them are way more talented than you are. They have, so much diversity. So the main challenge is how to lead teams and how to be led by others, and you have to struggle with egos, with conflicting personalities, with different approaches. So I think at the GSB, you're gonna have, plenty of courses that will shape your leadership style, that will make you aware of what are your strengths and weaknesses, and also to interact with other people to anticipate situations that you're gonna find in the workplace as a leader. So I would say it really transformed me from a leadership standpoint. You're gonna have several tools, courses, and extracurricular activities to test your leadership skills and learn from your classmates.
Yeah, I think in terms of following up a bit on what Jose was saying, I think 100% of the people you meet at the GSB are type A personality people. So everybody's gonna be in charge and make decisions and say the way things need to be done. So it's interesting to have to deal with everybody, and there's a lot of group work. So it's interesting to learn how to deal with that and come out of it. And and everybody's leading, but in a different way. And knowing, it's important to know when to step down and when to step up. And I think that translates later on work-wise. In work, depending where you go to work, you'll find more or less type A personality people, but it's important to recognize that, and then to know how to deal with it and how to manage situations.
Okay, so we've got a question here about, this is actually from Victor, and I think it's really thought-provoking. So when you look back to who you were as a person before and after your GSB experience, what would you say changed the most? And maybe we'll have one or two of our panelists answer that question. If it strikes anyone's fancy, otherwise I can call on someone. Ignacio, I see you smiling.
Yeah.
Do you want to take this?
Yeah, I can take it. Of course, that for each of us, it's a different story. But for me, I think the GSB helped me become a more diverse persona, so as to say, because I had the opportunity to really explore many things while at the GSB. I have a very traditional background in corporate finance, working for companies. So, but I took advantage of the GSB to attend classes in other schools, to attend talks with people from all walks of life. I joined the entrepreneurship club and visited many startups, not because I wanted to create a startup after the GSB, but rather because I wanted to see how it's like to be an entrepreneur and have your own company. I did a class on dynamics of the wine industry. just because I wanted to learn about that industry, which was important in Argentina, but also because I wanted to have fun. So and I ended up traveling in around 40 countries from in those years, considering all the summer breaks and then 3 months off that we took with some classmates to travel across Asia and Russia. So in a sense, I think that I took advantage of like the platform that the GSB provides to explore like many interests, and that stay with me in different dimensions, not necessarily like professionally speaking, but today I'm a big fan of wine tasting, and with my wife we have been traveling in around 100 countries. So it's those passions that I ignited at the GSB stay with me in a different role in my life. So that could be an experience.
Luca, could you talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial community and different resources or clubs that might have been available for folks interested in entrepreneurship?
Yeah, sure thing. So first of all, I mean, you may know that the GSB is one of the schools which is characterized by a very strong entrepreneurial community, and both on the side of raising money, of getting contacts with potential venture firms that would sponsor your endeavor, as well as with resources to be able to operate that from the ground up. And I came to the GSB with the idea of trying out the entrepreneurial or entrepreneurship, and I think it was amazing. From the side of, so there's several classes which are 100% focused on entrepreneurship. One of them, which I told you before, was formation ventures, which is more of a case study approach. So it's also multidisciplinary. There's another one which is very popular, which you need to apply for, is called Startup Garage. And I also did that one, where you basically go through the whole like need finding process to be able to create an idea from scratch based on a need, and to start looking for something which is called product market fit, which is the way where an idea gets demand and ends up becoming a company or a startup. And it was a really good class. There's another class which is connected to the GSB as well, but also imparted by the engineering school, which is called Lean Startup or Lean Launchpad, I think it's called. It's very popular as well, and several GSB classmates take it. And you can see from all those classes like different students that end up creating ventures based on those ideas and end up getting funding. And you hear several case studies of public companies which started through those classes, which is amazing to hear as well. And there's also different initiatives which are extracurricular. So it's funding given to you, one by Stanford. I think, I don't remember the exact names of them because I never pursued one. But a couple of friends of mine, one of them is actually Chilean. He got probably like $30,000-$50,000 just to explore their startup endeavor while he was at school. And that was like zero equity. It was just like, we want to give you the opportunity to start this and to seek this path that you're looking for. And it was just amazing, like to have those resources without one, like giving 0% equity of your future endeavor, and two, just through a PowerPoint or an idea you had and maybe a vision you had. So yeah.
Thank you. Sophia, maybe you could take this next one. Could you talk about what some of the most important or impactful tools that Stanford gave you to accomplish your post-MBA goals?
Well, I think the Stanford network is probably the most important one in terms of I mean, I had I'm from Argentina, but I did my undergrad in the States, and I worked before the MBA in the States. So I wanted to go actually to Europe afterwards. And actually getting a job in Europe from Stanford is not as easy as it might. It's not the easiest thing, just because of time zone, and just the Stanford community is super strong in the Bay Area and the US, but maybe not that strong outside of the US. Having said that, when I started looking for jobs in Europe, it was pretty easy with the Stanford community. The Stanford name is super strong, so it opens lots of doors. And after and then years down the road, when I had to switch jobs, etc., it kept the Stanford name and the Stanford community and everything that kind of Stanford related is something very strong and opens lots of doors. And I think that was definitely one of the most valuable tools I got from the MBA.
Jose, I'm going to go to you. Could you share how the GSB may have changed your view of your home country and maybe what you could achieve there in Peru?
Well, I started seeing lots of similarities between San Francisco and Lima. Both are next to the ocean, both are super cloudy, both have very warm people. But in general, other than those minor details, what I would say is when you spend 3 years in California, because I stayed for a year working there, and then you come to your country, you come full of ideas, initiatives, a true interest in improving and raising the bar at your country. And that not only includes, when you think about just upgrading the infrastructure, but just giving back to the community, understanding that, you had the opportunity of studying and learning at a fantastic institution, and now going back to your country to give back, to get involved into take your business to the next level, to support your community locally. So I would say I came back to Peru after 3 years with a lot of good ideas to contribute to the country, and that is something that I would say all of us who came back to our countries could benefit from the GSB experience.
So I think this next question I'm going to pose to Ignacio. Would you say that Stanford was worth the investment, and did it open up many opportunities for work or your life, etc.?
Well, I say absolutely yes, no doubt. In fact, back in time when I applied, I obtained a full scholarship, full tuition paid, plus living expenses from another top US school, and I declined that because I wanted to attend Stanford, and because it was worth the investment of time and of money. I always sort of share the analogy when you are, at least in my case, but it may not apply to everyone, but when you're building your professional career in your home country or in the type of companies you're working for, it's like running it's a racetrack with we call it turismo carretera in Spanish, at least in Argentina. And you go to Stanford, and when you exit, you suddenly appear with an F1 car in an F1 race. It's up to you how to drive the car, but you have the chance and you have access to all those opportunities that Sofia mentioned. It's not that you are going to have any special power, or it's not that you will develop any sense of entitlement, but the truth is that will open a lot of opportunities for you to go and capture those opportunities. So in my case, I wanted to change the function I was working on, in part the geography, also the industries, and I did change all three things at the same time. And Stanford was a great catalyst in giving me the confidence that I could do it. And that for me is the analogy I would like to say. It's we are all doing great in your professional careers today. That's why we are really considering applying to Stanford in most of the cases. But I think that Stanford allows you to think far bigger and to elevate your game. And that's quite unique of the ethos of the university.
Luca, I'm going to come back to you. You're closest to the application process. Could you talk about maybe what was the most challenging part about applying?
About applying. I think the whole application is challenging. I think COVID is probably making it even more challenging. I've heard a bunch of nightmare stories of how to do the GMAT online, etc., and you have one shot instead of like the 3 or 4 that many of us could have taken. I think, but like going back to the application, and definitely the thing that took me the most amount of time was writing the essay, the famous what matters most to you and why. And at the end of the day, it's a very different essay from other schools I applied to, because it's an essay that forces you to do real introspection on everything that has happened in your life and why those things have shaped you into who you are. And I don't think that anyone has a crystal ball of how to nail that essay. So there's no right or wrong when you write that essay, which makes it really interesting, because at the end of the day, your best shot is just writing who you truly are and what you really want to be, and crossing fingers that works out. So the whole uncertainty of not being able to optimize that essay, because that essay cannot be optimized in any shape or form, was probably the hardest part of the application, but also the best part of it as well. Because I mean, I've read that essay. I actually had to read it for a couple of classmates while I was at GSB, and that's something that we tend to do as well, in some with some glasses of wine and whatnot. And you go back to that essay. It's not just a one-off thing that you do and you never again read it. Like, you actually go back to it, and it needs to be stuff that you're proud or you really mean, and not stuff that you think is just going to increase your odds to getting into Stanford. So that was probably the most challenging part, but also the best part of it.
So I'm going to go to Jose and Sophia for this one. Maybe Jose, will start with you, and then Sophia, since you attended Wharton, you might be able to give a different perspective. But why did you choose the GSB over any other business school?
So I would say, again, and I said this before, I wasn't a career changer. The MBA wasn't for me to go from banking to something different. I wanted to stay in finance. To me, the MBA was about taking myself out of the comfort zone from a personal standpoint, taking my personal skills to the next level. So I found at the GSB a set of values, a sense of community that I didn't find anywhere else. And clearly, going to a place where you're surrounded by, the Silicon Valley and all this innovation culture was precisely what I was lacking. The ability of thinking out of the box, to again take myself out of the comfort zone was something that Stanford offered, and that I didn't find in such a capacity in other schools. Again, to me, the MBA brings you a lot of tools and knowledge to be a fantastic professional, but nowadays, a lot of that knowledge is available in other sources. I think, to me, the MBA is about the personal experience, it's about the relationships you develop, the network, the culture you're surrounded by. And that is something where I think Stanford stands out in a unique way.
Well, for me, it was definitely about getting out of my comfort zone. I'd spent the last many years in the East Coast. I had already done kind of a first jump out of my comfort zone when I went from Argentina to the US to study. But after that, I had already spent 8 years in the East Coast. I did my undergrad there, and then I did 4 years in New York, working mainly in Goldman Sachs. So going to the West Coast, going to Stanford was something new, something different, huge change. I'd been only once to California before. It was also kind of getting more in understanding a bit more about entrepreneurship, about technology, which were things that were not normal to me. I used Google was kind of a tool, but not a company. There was no company behind it. It was just a tool I used. So it was experiencing new things, and it was, I mean, that's maybe why I chose it. And also a little bit about what I mentioned before, Stanford in the US is a huge name, and it opens lots of doors. So that was definitely something that I valued. And in retrospect, it was definitely the one of the best choices I made. It was an amazing experience, great years, great friendships, lots of learning. It was amazing. But I guess for me, it was doing something different in terms of education, in terms of what I was living, etc.
And then Luca, could you talk a little bit about the Career Management Center and the role it may have played for getting an internship or a job, and if there's anything you think that the Career Management Center could improve upon?
Sure. So the Career Management Center is basically a division within the GSB that helps you on recruiting, both in terms of summer as well as in terms of full-time. They have both regional expertise as well as like vertical expertise in terms of different industries. And I think it's a really good resource, particularly for internationals and internationals that are trying to get jobs into technology, consulting in the US, private equity in the US, and those industries where it's a bit harder because you're basically benchmarked you're benchmarked with Americans and people that are native English speakers that studied in very prestigious American schools, and that we know that employers will have a bias towards them. So they help you in a way to position your profile and to show your strengths or your relative strengths as an international to be able to be competitive in those recruiting processes. So if you ever had the aspiration of staying into the US and working here, not necessarily with your former employee, leveraging on the CMC is actually a really good source. And at the end of the day, and with most of the things at Stanford, is about how much time you put into it. So if Bill or whoever you're having a relationship with in the CMC knows that you really want to do it and you're spending a lot of time on it, he's going to spend a lot of time on you. If you just send him your resume and expect him to land you a job at Google, it's probably not going to happen. But at the end of the day, what I saw from all my classmates was that they were really able to help them both polishing their resume and their profile, and on the other side, helping them on the more structured recruiting process, which is like big tech, as I said, consulting, and big finance. And for the more small things or very specific things that are not necessarily just typical recruiting, they can help you, like providing you with a bit of like words of wisdom and next steps, checking those cold emails that you're probably going to send, et cetera, et cetera. So very valuable, I think, in terms of areas of improvement. Now that you ask, Julianne, it's probably getting a bit more of geographical expertise and being able to, in a way, to portray a bit better what are the benefits of recruiting internationals in the US, and getting those relationships as well. Because if not, you end up like getting funneled into the more structured, like the big opportunities, and you end up like losing the chance to getting into the more specific things you may be interested in. But really good resource.
Okay, so we have time for one last question. Ignacio, I might pose this to you, and then if anyone wants to add anything, feel free. So question focusing on diversity, and would you say that, and I for alums, I would encourage you to think of, now all of the other alums from different classes you've met, but would you say that Stanford values Latinos from different backgrounds, both non-white, non-male, LGBTQ? What would you say diversity is among your peers as well as your alumni community?
By chance, while Luca was talking, I was reflecting on my experience around diversity at the GSB, and I think that the GSB, back in time, I attended between 2007 and 2009, so that's more than 10 years ago. Back in time, the GSB was a pioneer on diversity. I remember there were a lot of classes, for instance, around for women, around interpersonal dynamics or leadership. I attended one of those classes because I was dating a GSBer, and she invited me to a class with 100 ladies, and there were 3 males. And that was a moment that we always remember, because it was the first time, at least in my life, that I was in a group like very different from myself. And the GSB created those environments when it was not that common. So in that sense, I think that the GSB was a pioneer on this topic. And to be honest, I never felt any difference in terms of the the ethnicity or the background of our people. The Latino community is big at Stanford. In my class, there were a lot of Mexicans, and also the university does a very good job of blending people. So in my touchy-feely class, for instance, I was with people who were like gay, Jewish, Latino, Black, white, Europeans, and trying to put together different ethnic groups, so as Asian, and all these people came from different backgrounds, and that group was designed on purpose to have very, very different people into the group. So sharing over a full quarter, how do all these people feel about the same realities that we face at the university? For me, it's quite a unique learning experience that probably in 15 years ago, no one was able to provide, at least on an MBA education. I don't know how it is today, but the fundamentals were in there when I attended, and probably that has evolved. So in that sense, I think that the GSB, it's really cutting edge, to be honest.
Thank you. So I'm going to start closing us out. Thank you, all of our panelists, for sharing your experiences and sharing your background and everything, answering our question. I really thank you all for coming today. I know, it's different times throughout the world, wherever you are, but thank you for making time to hear about us and learn about the GSB. I hope you've been inspired by everything you've heard today, and I do hope we'll see you at future events. Thank you all so much for your time and for your interest in Stanford, and best of luck to those of you who are applying in the next year or so. Thanks for joining.